The more time we as a collective audience spend with Clair, Obscur, Expedition 33, the more we realize just how much depth and complexity there is to this game. There's a lot to discuss, a lot to discover, and today I wanted to put together 16 hints, tips, and suggestions that I've learned over the course of my time with the game to help out not only new players as they get through Act 1, but also returning players who maybe missed a mechanic or going through New Game Plus and want to be a bit more optimal. We have a lot to get through here, so let's get started. My name is Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman, and welcome back to the channel.
We are Expedition 33.
Hello everyone, if you enjoy what I do, including my coverage of very good JRPG style games such as Clair, Obscur, Expedition 33, then a like on this video and a subscription to the channel would be very much appreciated. Thank you so much. We're splitting this one into two different parts today. The first part is all about gameplay, combat, mechanics, exploration, etc. And then the second, slightly shorter part is about character building and party maintenance. Let's start with that gameplay stuff. We have a nice section here about the shoot mechanic actually, because I've been seeing a lot of people who aren't really talking about it or don't seem to be appreciating it for what it is. So, number one. Shoot enemies on the map to stun them and get the first strike. This is one that was actually recommended to me by one of my viewers during one of my streams, so shout out to y'all for keeping me informed and as such keeping everyone else informed. But if you've ever been wondering why it is that you can just shoot on the map as you're running around, beyond just being able to like engage with certain puzzles and things, it's because you can in fact shoot at an enemy that is running towards you to momentarily stun it, letting you get the opportunity for a first strike. If you need to just buy yourself some distance, maybe something snuck up on you, you got backed into a corner, etc., you have an option here to buy a little bit of time, buy a little bit of space, and then get that very valuable first strike. Because especially on Expert, enemies getting the first hit when you don't know maybe what they're going to be throwing at you, or you're in a new area and you're not sure about your parry timings, can be really dangerous. So this is a very solid option to have in your back pocket. Speaking of shooting enemies, not all enemies have weak points. Some are hidden, some are obvious, and some just don't have them at all. This is one that might not be as obvious until you start to get into some of the second and third areas in the game if you're playing fairly early on. You know, a lot of the starter enemies have a big glowing orb in the center of their head where it's like, well, I wonder what it is that I'm supposed to shoot at here. I couldn't possibly imagine. But then once you start to encounter some more solid enemies that are a little bit more tricky, you start finding gestrels, things like that, it might be a little harder to discern what it is that you're supposed to hit. Keep an eye out for these sort of like swirly, multicolored spots or growths. As a cancer survivor, I would say tumors, I don't know, that are sometimes fairly well hidden on these enemies, especially like shoulders and the backs of the arms. Hit these and that will count as a weak point. Sometimes you need to hit them multiple times. Sometimes you need to wait for an enemy's animation to bring it into view so you can actually take a quick shot at it. So be careful with your aim. But these are the things to go for, and oftentimes will be very important for negating or at least diminishing an enemy's big attack. Now, of course, if some enemies don't have a specific weak point that's going to disable them or deal a huge chunk of damage in some way, what are you supposed to do to those enemies with your shot mechanic? You just not use it on them? Not necessarily. Many enemies do have an extra damage multiplier on what would be like their head region, even if shooting them in the head doesn't actually wind up mitigating some attack or dealing a huge, massive chunk of bonus damage, things like that. It'll still deal bonus damage. So you can actually eke out some extra hits on enemies like here, where you can actually see I'm hitting more damage on the head rather than on their limbs, which can be very nice if you wind up actually going for like a little bit of a more shot-based build, or you just have some extra AP you're trying to throw around to finish off an enemy, soften it up, what have you. Very handy little trick to have. Test out some different shots on what may potentially be different weak points on enemies and see if you get some bonus damage. It's always good to learn. Now, I mentioned something the other that may have raised a couple of eyebrows, and that's going to be the focus of our next tip slash, I guess, discussion more really. Shot can be more than just a utility option. I've actually been experimenting with a build on my Luna that has her using her shot as her primary attack. And I have some clips here that you'll be able to see. With the right setup, she's dealing massive damage, she's able to mark, she's able to burn, she's able to get AP back when she kills something to continue firing, basically a free reload on a kill, and you could actually clear whole groups of enemies with this because of the raw damage output that you have available. It was this build that made me realize that you really shouldn't discount the ability of Shot to be a primary damage dealer. It just goes to show the depth of creativity and customizability for the party that Expedition 33 really puts in your hands, and I really enjoy that, because you know what? Sometimes it is fun to just sit back and be like, no, you know what? Put up a hand, Biden blast, and just mow down a bunch of enemies without ever having to use any skills or even letting them get an attack in. It's very, very fun, and I definitely encourage anyone who hasn't used shot as a damage output option to check it out. Is it always going to be the best thing? Certainly not, but it can actually be surprising in how often it can be useful for you. Speaking of damage, I mean, we have to talk about the burn status effect, and that's the point of our next tip. Burn is insane. Like, yeah, okay, you can slow enemies, right, and manipulate the turn order in that way, or you can, like, stun things to negate a turn, whatever, but that's not taking an enemy out. It's just kicking the can down the road. You know what stacking massive amounts of burn is doing? Allowing you to destroy anything in the game, so long as you're able to survive long enough for those ticks to trigger. I haven't figured out the exact calculation yet. If someone has it, by all means, please drop it in the comments so that we can actually crunch the numbers here. But it seems like burn does a sort of % damage on certain enemies, or maybe all enemies, and just, you know, weaker enemies it's harder to see, right? For example, I was fighting a major super boss on one of the open world sections, and the only reason that I even got close to defeating the thing, and really only died because I flubbed a couple of parry timings, was the fact that I was stacking an absolutely massive amount of burn on it. My regular attacks, my skills were doing chump change. They weren't doing anything. But when I had 8, 12, 16 stacks of burn going on this boss, and it was suddenly getting chunked for thousands of HP every time it took an action, things started to look a little bit more feasible in terms of actually bringing it down without spending an hour in the fight. What's so nice about this is the fact that this triggers every time an enemy takes an action. It's not like a slow over time thing in that way. When it's their turn, they take the burn. And if you have any sort of abilities that increase the duration of burn, or increase the stacks of burn, or increase vulnerability to fire damage, this can go up very, very quickly with fairly minimal investment in a particular build around it. Like, I'm just rocking Gustav, Mael, and Luna, and they happen to have some fire skills that are stacking burn on things, and already it's coming together. So I can only imagine how much more ridiculous it gets in the latter stages of the game, where you have more options available to you. Do not discount burn. Do not discount damage over time. This can be an absolutely massive tool in your arsenal. Speaking of tools in your arsenal, our next tip is talking about Gustav's overcharge ability, which is obviously an extremely powerful ability. When you get those 10 stacks and you decide that something just needs to be deleted off the map, Gustav is able to do it for you. When you need to be able to break a boss and deal a bunch of damage in the process, Gustav does that for you as well. And I've seen a lot of people kind of fall into this mindset due to that, where you can only use overcharge, or you should only use overcharge when it's at full charges. But that's not true. Overcharge actually just deals good to great damage across the spectrum of charges that it has. It doesn't deal like nuclear level damage until you get to level 10, but if you need a quick burst to finish off an enemy, use it at 5. Use it at 7. Hell, I've used it at 3 or no charges and still dealt a good chunk of damage, especially if the enemy is vulnerable to lightning. If you haven't tried it, I highly encourage experimenting with different tiers of charge on overcharge to see what thresholds you're kind of working with, so you know tactically when and where you should maybe wait to get a full charge, or use it early and get a little bit of an extra advantage in terms of momentum and flow in your combat stage by using those charges early. Highly recommend it. It's really opened up a lot of options for me since I kind of realized that this was something that I could start doing. Next up, and this is one of those ones that like seems painfully obvious to a lot of people, but I always like to throw some of these in here because there's a wide range of people that play these games, and it's really good to hammer down on the basics sometimes. I cannot emphasize enough how much you must master parrying, and the earlier you do it, the better off you'll be. Yes, you have two different forms of evading damage in this game, right? You can dodge, which is a lot safer, it's a lot easier, and you can parry, where the timing is a lot more precise, and if you miss it up, well, you're taking a big hit. The reason that you need to be able to master parry is not only the fact that actually successfully parrying an attack or a series of attacks gets you a big bonus hit at the end of the chain, it's the AP. AP economy is the single most important factor of combat in Clair Obscur Expedition 33, and having an enemy that hits you 2, 3, 4 times with a combo, and being able to parry all of those to get 3, 4 AP, cannot be overstated how valuable that is. Yes, it is more difficult to figure out the timing. Yes, it's not something that everyone is good at. I was not good at it. Anyone who watched my stream VODs saw me fight that first, kind of more powerful than you're supposed to fight at the time, green boss guy in the first zone, and it took like an hour and a half while I was just trying to learn the parry mechanics. but I came out the other side with a much greater understanding, not only of that boss's patterns, but what to look for, and kind of have a muscle memory feeling for proper parry timings across the entirety of Clair Obscur. Highly recommend that you pick this up, do a little bit of practice, do a little bit of learning. You'll be very, very happy that you did. Doesn't mean that you can't still dodge. You know, have the dodger skill will get you some AP. Enemies that are new to you, you're probably going to want to dodge it first until you learn their patterns. Totally get that. But parry as much and as often as you can, and you will find that your combat capabilities are much, much stronger. And yes, that said, that is actually kind of a tip in and of itself. Don't be afraid to dodge if you feel the need to when you're fighting a tough boss or when things are looking dire and you're just really trying to eke out the last little bit of damage to get the W. Maybe you're down to 2, maybe even only 1 character. You have no revives left and you just need to get that dub, or you're just scared, your palms are sweaty, knees weak, mom spaghetti, you don't know what to do. Just dodge. Just dodge, man. Equip the dodger skill if you want to make sure that you're still getting some AP. It's okay. Yes, it's very important that you master parrying, but dodge exists for a reason. Don't be afraid to use it. You'll probably find yourself getting a lot less frustrated while you're trying to learn how these enemies function. This next tip is a little bit of a more suggestion about exploration. You need to check every nook and every cranny in this game because secrets abound. The amount of stuff that I've realized that I've missed in this game, either due to commenters or viewers or friends being like, oh yeah, I saw you went through this area, but it looked like you didn't find this mime or this hidden puzzle or this picto that was around this corner that you missed. Like, there's so much stuff in this game. The first couple of areas, fairly linear with a couple of branching paths, but the further you get into the game, the more true this becomes. I most recently explored the Gestural Village, and the number of times that I got lost on the way up to it, going through the outskirts with all its different branching paths and hidden caves and dark tunnels, I felt like I was never going to find my way back out. And it was really cool to see that there was always something else around the corner for me to actually explore and be rewarded for. Very, very fun. Do not feel like you are on rails in this game. You most certainly are not. And that's before we even get to the overworld, where there's all sorts of different secrets to find, items to discover, enemies to fight, super bosses to fight, shortcuts to open, etc., etc. Next up, swap Pictos every time when you get a new one so you can learn more Lumina. This is one that I've been seeing a lot of people kind of mess up in the early game, and I think it's very important to emphasize that you must equip every new Picto that you find, at the very least, until you clear 4 battles with it and unlock its associated Lumina. Especially earlier on in the game, the stats that you're going to get from Pictos are not super vital, except for maybe in boss fights, whereas having all of your Luminas available to you for all of your characters for future build crafting will be infinitely more rewarding than the temporary stat buff that you're going to have from having a particular Picto equipped. Even if you don't think that you're going to need a particular Lumina right now, there's really no reason not to just learn it now while you have the option available to you. That way you never need to worry about specifically equipping that Picto again and being stuck with it. You can learn it, have it ready for maybe just one particular character who wants it due to a build that you're doing on them, and now it's just there, it's squared away in your toolbox. You don't have to think about it again until it becomes relevant. Absolutely vital that you do this. Do not miss your early opportunities to unlock a bunch of Luminas so that they're there for you. There's actually one more that I want to toss in here that I just remembered that I forgot to put in my list of tips, so if this throws off the count, then my apologies. It is what it is. But have you noticed those lanterns floating around in the sky, or maybe street lamps that are just conspicuously dotted along roads? While they are really cool, and they definitely add to that sort of otherworldly, post-apocalyptic, painted, artistic sort of style that every zone in Clair Obscur has going for it, I've actually discovered recently that these lanterns and lamps are actually kind of your guidance onto the right path. And what does that mean? Well, let me explain. As you're running around, you'll see these things floating around in the sky or along the side of the road, and if you follow them, you will find your way to the next objective that you need to go to. You will find yourself on the main path through a zone. This is obviously very useful as you again get into future zones where things do get more complicated. There's more branching paths, more tunnels, there's verticality that gets introduced with different layers of a zone, and you can actually start to get pretty lost. I got fairly lost when I was exploring the outskirts of the Gestural Village, and it took me a little bit to find my way back to actually get to the town and make my way through the zone. That's where the lanterns will come in. That is how they will be able to guide you forward. And also, not for nothing, if you're trying to figure out maybe if this is a zone that you need to explore, if it's like a little side area, look around. If there's no lanterns, it's probably something that's hidden or secret or some sort of side path. And if we've learned anything from the previous tips in this video, there's pretty much always going to be something of note, something of interest at the end of those dark little hidden side paths. So, not only do lanterns show you the way forward, they also show you when you're exploring something that maybe is a little bit of a side thing with a fun potential reward at the end. So, look for the lanterns. They will help to guide your way. Moving on now from the combat exploration mechanical side of things, we're going to go into more of a character and party maintenance side of things. With our first tip in this section, don't stress about your builds early on. You'll have plenty of chances to respec. This is always one of the things that I see people get the most caught up on in any sort of menu-based game where you can do a lot of micromanaging, applying skill points, etc., etc. How do I play optimally, right? This is something I've been seeing people get caught up on a lot, and it makes sense. And whenever you have a game that's very menu heavy, has a lot of skill points and skill trees and stat points and weapons and all sorts of fun stuff like that, you can get very caught up on your build in general and how to apply things to your characters. So we're going to have a few different points related to this. As far as your stats are concerned, don't focus too much on what you're putting things into. Just get the stats that you feel are appropriate to your character. You can always change it later once you have a better idea of not only how the game functions and what a character kind of needs, but also once you have an idea of what each character's role will be in your party, and then you can optimize their stats for that. There's a reason that the recode system exists in the game. You do get a very solid number of them, even in the early game, let alone by the end of the game, I'm sure. So, don't sweat the small stuff. Apply your skill points. Go with the flow. But then, of course, you might ask me, Tom, what should I put things into? Is there really no change? Does it really not matter? And of course, it always does matter a little bit, and we'll talk about that in our next tip here. My personal preference for the early game, spike your damage stats. Primarily, this is going to be your might, and this is going to be your luck. Agility also could be, depending, but for me, it's been might and luck. The main reason for this is that enemies aren't really hitting that hard. On expert, maybe so, but like you don't really need defensive stats in the early game, and the faster you bring down enemies, the less you have to worry about them actually potentially hitting you back, right? And you can start to pump really ridiculous damage numbers just by level 10, level 12, level 15 by stacking into certain stats. For me, that's been luck on Gustav, might on Luna, and luck again on Mael. Luck is going to give you a lot of crits. You'll see them start popping up a lot and getting a lot of bonus damage as a result. And Might has made it so that even Luna's basic attacks and shots deal ridiculous amount of damage, to say nothing of her spells. It's made forward progress a breeze. It's made not worrying about what build I'm using very, very easy, as I'm still very combat effective. And like we said in the previous tip, I can always go back and change it later. Speaking of not wasting certain points, or potentially wasting certain points, I highly recommend that you do not waste your weapon upgrades early. From what I've seen thus far, the requisite materials to start upgrading your weapons are fairly rare and fairly expensive, and you're going to find a lot of different weapons that are either straight upgrades, so the ones you're currently using, or just higher level than the ones you're currently using, or are a different build with a different element, different stat scaling and skills and everything else that you're going to want to swap to for a while. So it's going to be a major feels bad if you put a bunch of resources into a particular sword for Gustav, for example, only to find one that just comes in at a higher level and has a cool skill that you want to start using, right? So I wouldn't recommend using your weapon upgrades early. This is also partially due to our next tip. You can find free weapon upgrades from monster drops, largely in the overworld. This one actually caught me off guard. As I was exploring the overworld, making my way to the Jeschwal village, I fought a few different groups of enemies who just suddenly dropped upgraded versions of weapons that I had previously had. Basically how this functioned was they dropped another copy of a weapon, and from what my chat was saying, because they had experienced this previously, it added the weapon level that would have been to the weapon that I already had. So again, if I had put a bunch of fairly rare and valuable at that point in the game resources into another sword, only to have this one drop and outclass it, I would have been like excited for the new sword, sure, but also kind of disappointed that I just used those materials, right? So you're going to find different weapons. If you want to do a little bit of grinding, do it on the overworld, maybe find some upgrades for your weapons for free. It's pretty awesome. It's something that is not ever made apparent to you in the game. You just kind of got to discover it for yourself, so I wanted to pass it on to all of you. Coming up on our last two here, this is one more recommendation to not use certain resources early, and that is do not use your Color of Luminas early, as you have plenty of points now, and you will need far more customizability as you unlock more characters for your party. So, if you're not familiar, the color of Lumina gives you Lumina points on a specific character. It is a permanently consumed item that you kind of use like a rare candy in Pokemon, for example. And those Lumina points are what you use to activate Luminas on characters to really flesh out a build. Early on, you're not going to have that many Luminas and that many Pictos that you desperately need to activate on a character to be able to make forward progress. They get points as they level up, and that's going to be more than enough to get a loose build kind of going as you start to figure out what your party roles are going to be, how you want to build out your characters, while still being able to make forward progress in the game. By saving your color of Luminas, and as your party roster expands to the full 6 that I know of that will be in the game, you have the option to be versatile. If you need more skills on your Luna, say, because you have a particular support build you want to do on her, well, it's going to suck if you've kind of evenly spread all of your points between people, and now you're just like unlocking and activating stuff on Mael that you don't even need because she has the points available, when you really wish you could give those points to Luna instead, right? So, in any good RPG, you only want to use your resources once they are necessary. And this is one of those points where you have no need to use them now and can make much more effective use of them later. And finally, this is one that I've encountered as a kind of a frustrating point, and it's funny that people were recommending it to me because I already had it on this list, but there are going to be certain times where you need to break an enemy to be able to get some sort of progress in a fight, right? Whether one of your characters got eaten by a giant barnacle creature, or there's some massively powerful attack that an enemy's winding up and you need to be able to break them to destroy their weapon arm or something. If your character who can break doesn't have the AP, or is downed, or is just in an awkward place in the turn order where they're not able to do it when they need to do it, it sucks, and it means you getting your crap wrecked. So, you need to have multiple characters that can break. All 3 starting characters in Mael, Luna, and Gustav have a skill that allows them to break, and by having it available on at least 2, if not all 3, your versatility to be able to handle important fights, especially boss fights, will be much, much greater. You know, it kind of circles back around to the whole discussion of using Gustav's overcharge for damage when it's not fully charged, things like that. You can actually wait to get your full charge for max damage if you don't need to worry about having him also breaking when you need to break a boss. Let Lune do it. Let Mael do it. Their skills are typically a little bit cheaper and easier to activate because you don't have that double point cost going on like you do with overcharge. So it's very nice to have that option available. I highly recommend it as you push further and further into the game, just to give yourself a little bit of a break and a little bit of a lesser headache, you know? And that, my friends, is my first batch of tips for Clair Obscur Expedition 33. I've been putting this list together for the last couple of days. I know the game's been out for a little while. People with early access have been able to put together guides, things like that. But I feel like it's always good to have more information out there, and I hope that I was able to help all of y'all with at least one option on this list. As always, of course, if you have further suggestions that you would like to provide for other players, especially new players, players who are getting into maybe approaching Act 2 but are still in Act 1, things like that, drop them in the comments. If there's a bunch of good stuff, I'll compile it into one comment and pin it, or people can just peruse through and find stuff for themselves. It's useful. No spoilers, of course, but it's always nice when I can see people helping each other out. That's always fun. And if you'd like to see more of these types of videos for Expedition 33 going forward, let me know that as well. I have a bunch of potential content planned, and if we can get to it fast enough, then I'd be more than happy to make it. And I always like to hear what it is that you guys would like to see, so I can try and accommodate that as well. Until the next time, though, of course, thank you all so much for watching. My name has been Tom, otherwise known as Titanium Legman. I hope you all have a good night. Stay safe and healthy out there, everybody. And remember, be good to each other, y'all. Bye now.